Hello, people, and welcome back to the channel. Carlos Alcaraz versus Yannick Sinner, one of the most exciting rivalries on the tour at the moment. I cannot wait to get into this one. The head-to-head is 3-all between the two superstars. And before we get into it, remember that like button, do subscribe if you are new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. So we're going to break this down as we normally do by going over how they've looked so far to this stage. We're talking about the Beijing ATP 500 semifinals. It's been one of the most stacked ATP 500s to memory. And look, I mean, it's only fitting that we have a semifinal of this caliber. And the winner of this will play Medvedev or Zverev in the finals. So, look, the semifinals have not disappointed. And I would say, arguably, this is the more exciting one, just because, with Medvedev and Zverev, we've seen it quite a few times now, 16 times. We've only seen this one 6 times, and because the head-to-head is 3-all, because Sinner seems to be, apart from Djokovic and maybe Medvedev, he seems to be the guy to really trouble Alcaraz, and his style seems to be a bit uncomfortable for the Spaniard. So let's look at their route to this stage so far. So you can see here, Alcaraz has been pretty good, to be honest. He hasn't dropped a single set, beat Hanfmann, Musetti, and Ruud. And I think the Musetti and Ruud wins were pretty impressive. I was expecting him to win them anyway, in honesty, but I think 6-2, 6-2 over Musetti is pretty good. Musetti's been in some decent form. Against Ruud, he was 3-love down, if I'm not mistaken, in that first set, and then went on to win 6-4, 6-2, really picked up his game. For Yannick Sinner, it's not been quite as straightforward. One against Evans, Dan Evans, that is, in 3 sets in the opening match. Lost a tiebreaker, though, to him to concede that second set. Then against Nishioka, won in straight sets. Nishioka's been in some pretty good form, to be fair. And he bageled him as well in the second set, so a quick one there. And then Grigor Dimitrov, who's just coming off a very impressive win, a straight set win over Holger Rune, came up trumps against Sinner came up trumps against Dimitrov 6-4, 3-6, 6-2, which to me, again, it was an impressive victory because Dimitrov's been in good form, and Yannick Sinner showing yet again that he is one of the most consistent performers on tour at the moment, which is a real positive, especially I think throughout the year. He's been consistent. He's made a lot of quarterfinals, a lot of semifinals, a lot of finals. He just needs to add more titles to his column, and he will, and maybe it'll be here. So let's now look at the head-to-head. So let's say they play each other 6 times with 3 wins apiece. The most recent match being in Indian Wells, which was on hardcore. Alcaraz won in straight sets, 7-6, 6-3. And we are not only going to get into this, we're going to get some stats up before I go into really nitty-gritty into, the serve return dynamic and the forehand, the backhand, and how it might unravel during the match. I want to bring up some stats which are supplied by Beyond Tennis. So let me get those up now. And I think it really highlights exactly what this rivalry is all about. And you can see here, we'll go through this. So Sinner, I mean, he's been so good when it's come to playing Carlos Alcaraz. He's just been an absolute beast. And look, Sinner always raises the bar, always manages to raise the bar against Alcaraz. You can see in terms of the stats here against Alcaraz compared to his stats against the top 10 in the world. So against the top 10, points won on first serve, he's been around 60% or so. And you can see against Alcaraz, he's above that. So around 5% more by the looks of it. On points won on second serves, he's just on around 50%. And against Alcaraz, he's more around 55%. So 37% is the median value of points lost on serve against Alcaraz. But if we're talking about the other top 10, players face the same value as 40%. So that is an increase of it's a decrease of 3% of points lost on serve when he plays Alcaraz. So clearly showing that his style and just his level is definitely high when it comes to playing Alcaraz. Then if we talk about Alcaraz specifically, for him, his stats versus the top 10 versus Sinner, points won on first serve, very high against the top 10, almost at 75%. Then if we're talking about against Sinner, though, it's only around 60, 62%, 63%. Then if we look at points won on second serve, it's about the same. It's about the same, around 52, 53% there. So that's pretty even. But again, you can see a clear trend here that Sinner is able to hurt the Alcaraz serve more, and Sinner is able to hurt Alcaraz more with his serve, generally speaking. And not necessarily about just his serve, but in the service games, the return games, Sinner's able to have more of a say than any of the other top 10 players on average anyway against Alcaraz. And 38% is the median value of points lost on serve against Sinner, where the other top 10 players face the same value as 34%. So, yeah, clearly showing that he loses more points against Sinner compared to the top 10 when it comes to his service points. Then if we look at break points, so again, top 10, and in this case is versus Alcaraz. So this is talking about Sinner versus Alcaraz or Sinner versus the top 10. Break points saved, he's saving around just over 50% against the top 10. Against Alcaraz, it's up to 75%. So, look, I mean, we know that they're pretty good friends as well off court, and they've got a really nice camaraderie. And I do wonder whether that plays into it. And it's almost like, when you play one of your best friends at tennis and you really want to make sure you get the better of them. It's a really competitive match, and yes, you're enjoying it, but it adds that little bit of extra competition. I wonder whether that's what Sinner feels when he plays against him. Break points converted, again, you can see converting slightly less, so just around, I'd say 35% against the top 10. Against Alcaraz, it's up to around 40%, 45%. So an increase there, which is positive. And then if we're talking about break points saved versus the top 10 for Alcaraz, he's saving around 55%, 60% against the top 10, but only 52, 53% against Sinner. So a decrease there. And then break points converted, he's around 30%, 35%. And against Sinner, he's only at 25%. So clearly the stats, as I said, trending to the conclusion that Sinner is a difficult matchup for Alcaraz. Sets won, so 7 of the 10 sets won by Alcaraz against Sinner are longer sets, so 7-5 or 7-6, which is very interesting to sound, or to hear even. 4 of the 9 sets won by Sinner against Alcaraz are 6-2 or 6-1. So in this matchup, when Alcaraz is winning sets, he's actually 70% of the time, he's struggling. Like it's a 7-5 or 7-6 set, it's very tough. Whereas around half the time when Sinner wins a set against Alcaraz, he's winning it super comfortably, either a breadstick or a 6-2 set. And 4 out of the 6 of their matches started with a tiebreaker in the first set. So just showing how competitive it is. And all their matches have had at least one tiebreak. So those are the stats there. Very, very interesting. Thank you to Beyond Tennis for supplying those. And look, it's intriguing, right? It's very, very intriguing, to say the least, just because, when we talk about it and, we have a look at how the dynamic is of this matchup, you just have to think, okay, Alcaraz against most players, his style is just so difficult for them. But for Sinner, for some reason, and it's not for some reason, there are reasons for it, he isn't as intimidated by that style. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's get into technically why this matchup is how it is, and more about how I think it's going to play out potentially. So one of the biggest things for me with Sinner is his legs, and he is physically able to stick with Alcaraz in long exchanges, and his power hitting from the back of the court, from the baseline, not just on the forehand, but on the backhand side as well, means that he's actually able to push Alcaraz back. There's not a lot of players on tour who are able to push Alcaraz back, and not just push him back, but push him back consistently with quality. There's players that can play big tennis and they can hit big balls, and they can hit through the court with a lot of pace, but they aren't able to do it consistently. They are a lot more erratic. They make a lot more errors than Sinner when it comes to playing Alcaraz. And Sinner is one of those players that, as shown by the stats, he raised his level and he plays at a very, very high level against Alcaraz. And what he does very well is being able to stick with Alcaraz from the baseline exchanges and able to out-hit him at times. And he's got an incredible running forehand. So if Alcaraz moves him around, he's able to move well laterally. And then when Alcaraz plays the drop shot as well, he's able to negate that at times with fantastic movement up and down the court, moving forward with not just great movement with his legs, but also the flexibility he has. He's quite elastic as well. He's able to slide well. And obviously we know he's got a skiing background as well, and that I think that shows with the way that he moves on court, gives him that added bit of flexibility, which is really, really impressive. So the drop shot isn't as effective for Alcaraz, which is a big, big part of his game. It's something that you would argue is one of the best assets. Well, I would say it's probably the best drop shot on tour. I think there's probably better ones out there, but if we're talking about the top 20 anyway, he's got the best drop shot. His lob as well, I think, Sinner is able to, if he gets lobbed, he's normally able to get to that, whereas the tweener, or whether it's being able to get there with time to spare because he's so quick. And then if we're talking about, Alcaraz's power, now Sinner's able to soak that up very nicely from the back of the court. And mainly, I think Alcaraz isn't able to hurt him as much just because Sinner, as I said, is able to push Alcaraz back at times. And it means Alcaraz isn't able to consistently anyway push forward from the baseline as much as he would like. And that means not being able to necessarily come forward in transition as much as he would like, and not being able to dictate as much in the points as he would normally do against most opponents. With some opponents like a Medvedev, they might be happy to let Alcaraz dictate and at times soak it up and frustrate him. Sinner's not like that. Sinner will match him shot for shot from there. And Sinner's also got a good transition game, and he's also happy to come forward and volley. He hasn't got as good a hands as Alcaraz, even, but they're not bad. They're not bad at all. Those are real positives, I think. Just the physicality, the speed, the weight of shot. It's all there for Sinner, and those are big, big positives. And Alcaraz does struggle with them, and there's no doubt about it. The head-to-head proves that he is uncomfortable at moments and in sets. And against Sinner, there's not many matches where he'll play against Sinner and you think, oh, he looks really comfortable, just like he's destroying Sinner. That doesn't really happen very often. Sinner, for me, it's always an exciting matchup seeing him against Alcaraz, and it's one of these matchups that you're always excited to watch. So in terms of the serve return dynamic, now Alcaraz always likes using that kick serve out wide from the ad side, and he uses it on every surface. I think against Sinner, he tries to utilize it to try and drag him out and almost sneak into the net, serve and volley at times. He's got to be careful because Sinner's backhand is very good. And one of the biggest things that Sinner did against Alcaraz last year when they played at Wimbledon and he lost, and Sinner also beat him at Wimbledon and then also Umag as well, back-to-back victories, was he was winning the ad court exchange because what he was able to do really well, Sinner, was hit with either very good width cross court on the backhand or with really good depth to avoid Alcaraz running around the backhand, hitting the in-twin forehand or into-out forehand, which is really destructive by the Spaniard. And it is so hurtful. I think it just, when he's able to open up on the forehand in that ad court, it's just, you're in trouble because he can recover so well to the forehand side as well. He's got such speed that even if you do redirect it cross court, more likely than not, he's still going to be on the front foot or at least at neutral. So the problem is that the in-twin or into-out forehand from him is normally too good for the opponent to be able to be in a position to attack that open court effectively. But for Sinner, what he was doing really well is, as I said, yeah, going very, very accurately cross court. So either dragging him out wide with angle with the backhand cross, and his backhand is super solid. It's extremely balanced. It's one of the best two-handers on tour. My other video I was talking about Zverev and Medvedev and their two-handers, and he's in there. He's in there. He's in the top five. With Djokovic as well. I mean, that's four of the top five backhands on tour, I would say, for two-handers definitely. And Sinner's, he was able to just win those exchanges backhand to backhand, breaking down Alcaraz's backhand at Wimbledon on the grass. He wasn't slicing. He was able to hit through the court more, and the ball was keeping lower, and Alcaraz was trying to slice, and his slice just looked a bit awkward and like he was being rushed. Yeah, that was really impressive, and he's either going wider or deeper, which just means that Alcaraz doesn't have as much time to hit a forehand. And Sinner doesn't tend to go super loopy cross court with the backhand. He doesn't hit a huge amount of backhand lobs. So it just means that Alcaraz doesn't have as much time, and he's being rushed. And he knew, okay, I have to hit a backhand. I don't have time to run around my backhand and hit a forehand. So he was able to keep it away from the Alcaraz forehand, which is the bigger weapon, no doubt, and it can be, explosive. So that was a really real positive. And then forehand to forehand, the big thing about Sinner is that if Alcaraz drags him out wide, he's got one of the best running forehands, in my opinion, on tour. Like, he's got one I say in every single preview when I talk about Sinner, but he does have the best running forehand, I think. Alcaraz is up there as well, but I think Sinner's is the best. I think he's just got the best running forehand on tour. And it just becomes really exciting because he will get to a lot of those balls that Alcaraz will hit cross court. A lot of topspin drag him out, but he'll get to them and he'll hit it. He might hit a winner down the line, which will be incredible to watch. Or he'll go cross court big, he'll find a good angle, or he'll stick in a rally. And Alcaraz is the same, to be fair. So they both. I think Alcaraz, especially in those positions, is super good at being able to pass the opponent the net. Which is why both players are going to have to choose their moments carefully about when to transition. The approach needs to be good. They need to be covering the net well, attacking the net. And, at times, Alcaraz might lob Sinner, or Sinner might pass Alcaraz, or Alcaraz might pass Sinner. That's just going to happen, and they're going to have to accept that. But I do think they need to be quite brave, both players, and come to the net, because from the back of the court, it is a little bit of a lottery, in all honesty. That's just because they're so evenly matched, I think, from the back of the court in a lot of these matches. So it then, to me, comes down to, okay, who's going to be able to take the opportunities during the match? So who's going to be more clinical? Who's going to be able to construct the points better? Who's going to change direction first and have the best shot selection when it comes to the points? And, the approach shots and net play is then very pivotal when it comes to that, right? Because a lot of the points that go longer, they will end up getting finished up at the net, especially if a drop shot's being played, which both players will play drop shots at times. And then it comes to, okay, who can win those net exchanges? But of course, as in every single tennis match, what the most important factors are the serve return. The first strike, the serve is, in my opinion, the most important thing in tennis, and after that's the return. So, the first ball, the first strike from either the serve or returner, it normally dictates how the point is going to go. And it's important that both players, I think, serve well. I think Sinner needs to serve well because he can fluctuate quite a lot. And Alcaraz's serve is still a work in progress as well, in all honesty. But yeah, I do think he needs to serve well, Sinner. I think he needs to have variety. I think he needs to try and attack the Alcaraz backhand return as well, and make sure that he's varying it up. Don't be too samey. Alcaraz starts to read the serve really well if you start serving in certain patterns. And I also do think that his return, Sinner, he needs to be returning well, because Alcaraz does give you some chances. He's got a pretty good serve, but the second serve especially. I know he wins quite a few of his second serve points won, generally speaking, on tour. But that's mainly for me anyway. That's because of what he uses to back up the second serve. Sinner should be, in my opinion, attacking the second serve and getting himself on the front foot when he can against Alcaraz, especially given that if it's going to be a kick serve into his backhand, which is extremely solid, he doesn't mind hitting at shoulder height, that actually that should get him to neutral pretty quickly, and then he's got to take those opportunities. For Alcaraz, his serve, again, we will see some serve and volleying at times. We might see from Sinner as well, but he's going to mix it up. He will try and drag him out wide, and it's going to be intriguing to see. His serve is just one of those things that is evolving all the time. So it's not the finished article yet by any means. And on return, he's got to be clever. At times, he can go for too much on the return, and same with Sinner. They can go across court very hard, but not with enough depth or not enough width, and ends up opening them up, especially when they're returning wide serves to go cross court, and they go quick cross court, but it's too short. It sits up, and then they're in a really bad position for when the server goes down the line with the forehand or backhand. It just puts them in a really, really defensive position straight away. So depth is going to be key. Whoever hits the ball deeper on the day is probably going to win. And that's what Novak Djokovic has. That is really, if he wanted to name one thing that sets him apart from everyone else on tour, is depth of shot. That's what it is. It really is. And it sounds really simple to say that, but for me, it's the biggest factor. So these guys also need to learn that sometimes it's a bit better to take 5 miles per hour off your ground stroke and, hit the ball a bit deeper with more direction and with more accuracy than to just slap the ball and, it's not quite harming the opponent as much because positionally it's coming on nicely. It's more central, and the opponent isn't getting hurt, to be honest, with that, just because it's a bit quicker. So yeah, there needs to be a bit of, I think, intelligent play when it comes to these two, and I'm sure they will. And I think especially on return, we saw Alcaraz utilizing the deep return down the middle when he realized that he was being rushed and he couldn't necessarily hit an aggressive return down the line or cross court because he's either getting picked off and he didn't have enough depth or power to the court. So he said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to then go deep down the middle. I'm going to take a leaf out of Novak Djokovic's book and get myself to neutral as soon as possible. Sinner doesn't do that enough, interestingly enough. And I think if he does, in my opinion anyway, if he does employ that more in his game, then, it would take him up a slight notch above again. So in terms of a prediction, I mean, it's really the flip of a coin. I'm going to go Alcaraz in 3 sets, in 3 very, very tight sets. Sinner could easily win. In all honesty, could easily win. But I think I would either want to see an Alcaraz-Medvedev final or a Sinner-Zverev final. I don't have much appetite for Alcaraz-Zverev final because I think Alcaraz will destroy him. I don't think I have much appetite for Medvedev's Sinner final because I think Medvedev will destroy Sinner. And the best options we have are Alcaraz versus Medvedev or Zverev versus Sinner. But let me know in the comment section below who you think is going to win this one and why. And I appreciate you guys as always. Thank you very much.